seems we can start. So first of all, thank you guys for joining in. I'm really glad to see so many of you over here, just even standing here, sitting there or so. So really appreciate that for you to come in. And yeah, I am Justinas, Kuizinas, and I'll be basically presenting you today about data classes, TypedDict, and Pydantic in action. So, as I mentioned before, here is the QR code. So, in case you're interested, you can just scan it through, and you will be able to follow my slides live on your mobile phones. I really hope slides.com won't crash. So, yeah, we can test it out. And yeah, I'm from Kuizinas Technologies, and a little bit about me. So, here is the second QR code in case you're interested for the LinkedIn profile of mine. I tend to share some interesting topics, maybe about security, maybe about Python from time to time. So yeah, in case you're interested, just let's connect and let's keep in touch. But about me, I'm a Python developer for over 6 years. I've got a master's degree in IT security. I'm also team lead of 14 great Python specialists here at Kuizinas Technologies. I'm also AWS enthusiast and certified architect. I'm also a football fan. And the last point, I just marked it with the question mark about the first time speaker. Because some of you might know that I was in the previous PyCon, but not live. There was a recording of mine, because at the exact same day of the previous PyCon, my son was born. So yeah, you know, life happens. Thank you, I appreciate that, guys. So that's why before going to my topic, I really wanted to share some similarities which I found out about raising a child versus programming. So you know, debugging. With the child, there's always some debugging going on. You know, some certain steps which you are trying to follow to find the reason why he's crying and so on. So, you know, firstly, you try changing diapers, you try feeding him, you try putting him to sleep. But at the end of the day, there's always a senior who is coming to your aid. So, you know, in this case, it's a mother. You know, it always shows you the error reason and how to fix that easily. Yeah, so this junior must always be supervised, you know, because he tends to leave some little chaos behind him. But at the end of the day, this junior is always giving a smile to his mentor. So yeah, several points, you know, just to maybe initiate some things. But yeah, let's get serious and let's go straight to the topic about data classes and what led me to this topic, the motivation. So firstly, when working with microservices, you know, with other services which you're trying to communicate, which you're trying to write code to some interfaces, you might come into a problem that once you write it, it might be difficult for other people to come and to do updates on that code because, you know, maybe data set might be unknown for some reason or another. You know, because maybe you just use some data, but you're not aware of other structure which is remaining of that service. Yeah. So basically, that's when you're working, you know, more like with dictionaries, and you know, you're not defining what the dictionary or what structure there was. Yeah, when working with third-party services such as, I don't know, payment providers like Stripe, identity providers, or whatsoever, you might need to start the investigation from scratch from the documentation in case you just needed to do a very simple update, right? So in case you're not documenting your code, you're not writing some structures, you're not writing some types about that code, this might come as a headache at one point or another. And third point, which is also really helpful for me, once you define types or I don't know, structures for your code, making updates or refactorings is a lot easier because without that, you might come to your problem even when having 100% test coverage. So yeah, this is a very simple problem, 3 problems I would say. And here's the agenda of today's presentation. Basically, what we'll try to cover throughout this series of versions. Just for your information, basically we'll have a set of code which will try to evolve throughout different TypedDict, data classes, and Pydantic implementations. And we'll try to discuss very briefly what advantages did we receive, you know, and what can be problems with that implementation or another. So yeah, the setup. The code from which we'll try to start. So just imagine, we have a very simple function which is trying to call the user service, right? For example, on this service where this code is written, we need to get user data. So firstly, we have very simply the URL for that service. We have a function definition which expects some user ID. We have also a call to that service. Definitely we're having some errors, right? In case the response was not as we expected, we try to error it out. And we're definitely returning the JSON which we received from that service. So yeah, the problem with that is here below you can see the sample response from that service. Let's put it very simply. We have name, email, and followers count returning from the user service. So at this point, yes, we see the sample response, but when looking at the code itself, we might not be very clear about what type of user ID can be here, right? Whether it's an integer, maybe it's a UID. What type of dictionary is returned from that service, right? You might have some doc strings, but when reading the code itself, it can be very unclear about the structure which is being returned. So without further ado, we're introducing TypedDict. So this is the very first version which I've started using, and definitely all of our team is using that very successfully. So TypedDict are defined via the PEP 484. Actually, interesting fact, Lucas Lango, who was previously presenting, is also one of the authors. So definitely big kudos for him. And yeah, so what do we have now? We have a very simple update. Firstly, we have user ID. So now we're aware that user ID must be specified as the integer. And the response type. The response type says to us that there will be a dictionary with keys from strings, and the values which can be strings or integers. So that it's a syntax for the Python 3.10. Okay, from the first glance, it's working perfectly fine. It looks great, but the problem is that types of dictionary value doesn't depend on the dictionary keys. So if you remember from our response, we can have user names, emails, and followers counts, which can be strings, but followers count can only be integer. But by this definition, it states that even name can be integer as well, which is not exactly correct in our case. So this is why we need TypedDicts. So TypedDicts are coming to our rescue, and they are defined by PEP 589. And the good thing about them is that now we're aware of the structure, right? We have defined the TypedDict, which tells us that we will have the response of the dictionary, which will have name from string, email as a string as well, and followers count as the integer. Okay, looks fine at now. Good things about that is that it's only static type checking, right? So we're not changing any logic at all. In case we don't have any types, we can easily add them without a risk that we'll be changing our logic in the code or whatsoever. And it's only a type int. So in case we'll try to check user data's type at the line 15, it will still be a dictionary. It won't be user response data type or some other. No, it's still a dictionary, but it's giving us a hint that the structure of this dictionary will be like that. So it's really great for the readability. And yeah, by the end of the day, it also improves development experience because your IDEs can easily make completions out of this TypedDict. So it's really helping for your daily programming. Yeah, we have TypedDicts. What now? Let's say that we really want to have some more serious structures, right? We want to be certain about the structure within our code. That, for example, in case we receive the user, that this will be the structure which we'll be using further in our code. So now we have data classes. Data classes, just put very simply, they are blueprints for our classes. Under the hood, there are no magic at all. In case we add a decorator, it just immediately gives us default init methods, representation method, and comparison methods. So this is really great and doesn't require us for defining some more methods in our code. And yeah, looking into our example, what we now have user data class, right? We're still leaving the same function which we had previously, right? So we just want that function to only call the user service and to return the dictionary. So that's as it was previously. But now we just want to initiate a user class, which will be keeping the structure which we received from user service. So now we have the same name, email, and followers count. Just in addition to that, we have orders, which is a list of orders, of user orders. Just to put it very simply, let's imagine that this is the order service, and from order service, we're requesting to get some user data. So yeah, and we have user order, with very simple definition, total as the total for the order, create at that time of an order, and items count how many items we have within the order. So what now can we do? We can just easily initiate these objects and to keep them, as structured data for our future usage within our code. At this point, this is, the very basics of data classes, just to put, all of us at the same level in case we weren't using data classes. Well, now I really want to maybe touch some more interesting facts about data classes, which might, maybe some of you might not be aware of. So slots, yeah, Lukasz really did some job for me, and a little bit touched about that, about MyPyC and so on. So I just tried to maybe say something that he didn't mention previously. So yeah, slots for the data classes are kind of a new thing. It appeared only in Python 3.10, but slots for Python classes, as you know, for the classes only, they are for quite some time. Just for the data classes, they have been recently added. But maybe a little bit about slots. So under the hood, Python, once you initiate some instance, under the hood, all the instance variables are stored within the dictionary. So this is the nature of the Python, how it allows us dynamically add some more instance variables to the already initiated instance. Like for example, in case we have user and we want maybe to already initiate the user instance, we want to add surname. What we write, we just write user.surname equals to some, I don't know, some string. Right? Oh, okay, you still hear me, good. Yeah, so this is the default nature of the Python. So basically, then we can have a slot, because with the dictionary, the retrieval of the keys and values is pretty fast, but there is actually a faster mechanism, which is called slots. How it does that? It's basically a mechanism by just reserving a specific spot for your instance within the memory and not allowing to make it more dynamic. So in case you define the slots attribute, it brings us some more performance, some better performance, reduces the memory for our objects. And just for this simple example, for example, user class, I just tried to running the very simple test, and in my case, when using slots and without using slots, the performance increase was about 20%. Just for a very simple action, retrieval of the instance variable, deleting instance variable, and setting instance variable. Actually, I found some articles which states that while using slots, the performance increase was over 40%. So these numbers are actually really nice, but probably it really depends on your case as well. And yeah, probably a good question from your side would be why it's not enabled by default, the slots functionality. Because as I mentioned, it makes Python very strict. So this means that we are not allowed, as I mentioned previously, to set dynamic variables on the instance which was already initiated, right? Then we've got a problem about multiple inheritance, so we're not allowed to do that with slots, and so on, which we must be aware of while writing our code. So yeah, and for the data classes, slots can be easily turned on just by writing slots equals true. And yeah, this can be really a great improvement to your code in case you're already using slots and data classes. Next thing, which is also very cool about data classes, is that data class can be set as immutable. But by saying that, I mean once we initiate the data class object, for example, let us say we have set user order to be immutable, to be frozen. After initialization, Python does not allow us to modify it anymore. So basically what we get at this point, we get an error that this instance is frozen and we are not able to modify it after it was initialized. So this can be really great in these cases when, for example, you need to initialize the object and then you're passing it through, I don't know, 5 functions or 6 functions, throughout your code. And you want to be sure that at these functions, this object was not modified at all. So in this case, definitely frozen equals true will help you to write better code. And yeah, one more thing about data classes is that you should be careful about defaults and inheritance. These are kind of 2 points to cover. So first one is about defaults. So as you can see on the line 7, by specifying the default, we need to use field with default factory. Why we need to do so? Because naturally, a very simple urge to write would be created at equals datetime.now opening and closing brackets. But by writing this, this would mean that all the instances initiated at the runtime will have the same datetime, which is the start of your program. You know, once all your Python files were parsed. So yeah, you should be aware of. So in case you need to call some functions when initiating objects, you must use Dataclasses field with default factory. And the second thing is about the inheritance. So in case you have some parent class with some defaults, right, as in this case created at, you will receive some errors when trying to define user order with some remaining fields which do not have the default value. The reason behind this is that, as I mentioned in the very first slide about data classes, is that it gives us some helpers like default representation method, default init method. So this is the problem about some automatization, because the way how it constructs and how it puts the init initialization method, the init vendor method, is it puts all the variables in the order, right? In the order from the class. So in this way, we will receive the automatic init method from. And yeah, next thing is about Pydantic. So next slide will be about the Pydantic, but maybe a little bit introduction why you would consider, you know, because Dataclasses at first looks really cool, you know, it really does the job, probably the majority of job which might be required for us in case we need some data containers. But for example, at one point or another, you will come to the point where you will need some data sanitization, right? Some data validation, so maybe custom validation for your objects, for your business cases. And at that point, in case you're only using data classes, you will start considering some third-party libraries, like probably one of the most popular, Marshmallow, right? Which will do the sanitization, the validation of types passed to the class, and all the custom validation logic. But I have another suggestion in case this is the case for you. We have Pydantic. Pydantic, to be very short, is data validation with type hints and data classes included. And one cool thing about Pydantic is that it provides, it enforces type hints at runtime. So this is a great thing in case you want to be sure about your types, maybe about your specific class types at runtime. And yeah, one more interesting fact is that data classes, TypedDicts, type hints are all within the standard library. So you don't need any third-party installations to get already the advantages which are brought by the TypedDicts and data classes. But for the Pydantic, yes, you need to install it, and in some projects this can be quite a headache to get some approvals, maybe for libraries and so on. So yeah, it requires library installation, but it's got great MyPy, PyCharm, Visual Code Studio support. One more cool feature is that it automatically generates JSON schemas from your models. So in case you're just defining a model, you will automatically get JSON schema, which will be used for the Open API. Then you get immediately Swagger, Redux structures out of the box. So this is a really great feature of the Pydantic. And last thing, it's got super readable docs. So in case you're looking for some I don't know, how to use Pydantic or how to use some functions of the Pydantic, you will definitely find it easily there. But yeah, coming to our example, now we have, instead of a decorator for the data class, now we have a base model. So by inheriting the base model, we immediately set Pydantic into action into our use case. So apart from that, we still have same type hints, same structure for the user order which we had previously. If you remember from the previous examples, we had user order as a frozen and made it as the immutable one. So for this case, for the Pydantic case, we need to set the class config, which will make it immutable, and as in the previous example, we won't be able to modify instances after initialization. And what is the new thing which we can do now is we can set validators. So we can just write some custom functions to, I don't know, check, for example, in case items count within the order isn't below 0. Right? So we can easily write this validator and it will be checked while initiating the class. And what can we do now on the initialization time? We can try writing try except block. So just by writing this try except block, we will be catching all the errors on the initialization time, because as I mentioned previously, now we're type aware on the runtime. So in case we'll try to pass user order total amount for the string, we will get a runtime error that the string is not possible for this type. So without writing any more specific code, we can easily move it to that. And yeah, one more interesting thing about Pydantic is naturally you might come up with a question, I'm using data classes, how could I easily transit to using Pydantic? Pydantic is also prepared for that, so it's got a really cool decorator, which is, just by replacing data classes import with the Pydantic import, we're bringing Pydantic into our example. And we immediately get types and type checkings at runtime as well. So yeah, this is a really great decorator which can be used for easy transition from data classes to Pydantic. Yeah, and as I mentioned, we now can write, we must not forget write validation error except. Yeah, summary time. So TypedDict can be really helpful for structured definitions, right? For static type checkings without interfering with the runtime, with your business logic. So, they can be sometimes called as the documentation for your code or so on. But, yes, they will also require some more time for you to define them. But at the end of the day, they will really bring some more advantages and, some more pluses to your development experience. While data classes are really great data containers, and we discussed what great features it can provide. They can be made immutable. They can use slots features to make our performance greater, especially when we're working, on maybe some high count of items within our memory. And Pydantic should be considered mainly when you want to, push types a little bit further and to bring them to your runtime, or you want to do some sanitization for your objects. One thing which I really want to mention is that the things which I consider here are definitely not the only functions and functionalities available from the TypedDicts, data classes, or Pydantics. Like data classes got really great ordering, posting it, vendor methods, and so on. So you should really remember that when you're using them, just check it out. Maybe you'll find some more interesting functionalities which will suit your case well. But yeah, like Pydantic is really great for the fast API and it comes out of the box. But I just tried to cover it maybe more from my experience, which really helped me and what I really found it interesting while investigating and implementing this within my code. Before ending my presentation, I really want also to make some announcements about Kuizinas Technologies. Is that because we're really hiring and we really want to expand our team, because currently we've got 14 probably best Python developers in the hood. We've got brand new office, we've got tons of projects starting from pure Python, Django, Flask, AWS, and so on. So in case you really want to challenge you and in case you're looking for challenges, I really believe that Kuizinas Technologies can be quite a good place for you to try it out. Yeah, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on quality, learning, sharing knowledge. So we've got great meetups every Friday where we're trying to share what we learned so far, because this presentation has started within our guild meetings, and now it's just evolved into PyCon's topic. And one last QR code, which I mentioned, is about internship programs. So in case you're interested about the Python's internship, we're starting that in June. So in case you're interested, try to register it, and I really believe that you will gain some great experience during this period. And yeah, in case you're looking some more information, please feel free to come to our booth down in the hall. You will definitely spot it out with great TV, and I'll be probably the majority of time there. In case you're looking for some, discussions, questions, feel free to come here, join. We will have some more colleagues over there in case you'll be interested to ask questions for them. So yeah, probably that's it. I really hope that you enjoyed my speech. Thank you for gathering all here, guys. And yeah, probably time for questions, right?